I've never been the kind of guy who thought much about fate or karma, but looking back now, I should have seen the signs sooner. Jane and I had been together for about 5 years, married for 2, and honestly I thought everything was fine. She was a little bitchy at times, who is? But I figured it was just her personality, maybe stress from work or whatever. She was a research scientist, really into her quantum computing projects, and I was proud of her. She was smart, driven, and I always believed she loved me. At the start, things weren't perfect, but they weren't terrible either. We'd go out sometimes, have dinner, watch Netflix, and I thought we had a decent marriage. But then little things started to change. She became more secretive, more dismissive. She'd spend longer hours at the lab, claiming she was working on some breakthrough, but I'd catch her looking at her phone more often, hiding her texts when I came near. I brushed it off as her being stressed, but the gut feeling that something was off kept gnawing at me. Then, last month, she started canceling plans last minute, saying she had to stay late for a conference or an urgent meeting. I didn't think much of it until I noticed her phone's screen lighting up at odd hours, and she'd quickly grab it, hide it in her purse. One night, I saw her sneaking out of bed after I was asleep, looking uneasy. I followed her just out of curiosity, even though I knew it was probably petty. But what I found blew me away. She was sneaking into the lab building, which isn't unusual. She works late. Except this time, I caught her slipping into the side entrance when I was passing by in the car. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I was just driving home from a friend's place. I slowed down to see better, and her figure disappeared into the building. That's when I decided to do some digging. Something was going on, and I wasn't going to sit around pretending everything was okay anymore. The next day I looked through her stuff, her emails, her messages, found nothing concrete yet. But then I remembered some odd things she'd said about her research partner, Mark. She'd been acting strangely around him, more secretive, dismissive when I asked about her work. She also kept mentioning their algorithm development sessions, how they stayed late working together. I thought it was just the usual research stuff, but now I was starting to see a pattern. The way she would defend Mark when I asked if they were just colleagues, the way she'd glare when I looked at her phone. It all added up to something. One night I decided to go to the lab myself, just to see if I could find anything. I parked nearby, kept my eyes open, and waited. Around 11:30 p.m. I saw her enter again. This time I followed her in through a side door I somehow found out was unlocked after hours. Inside, the place was dark, but I saw her and Mark sitting close together at a table, their heads nearly touching. They were deep in some conversation, but I could tell from the way they moved, her leaning into him, him whispering stuff. It was more than just work talk. I stood there, stunned. My stomach was twisting. I could see the way they looked at each other, and I realized with ice-cold clarity that this wasn't just some late-night research session. They had been fucking probably for weeks. The way she looked at him, her bitchy smirk, the way he looked at her, it was obvious. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of rage, betrayal, and heartbreak. I wanted to burst in, yell, scream, but I just backed away slowly, heart pounding so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. I left before they saw me. I just drove home in silence, trying not to lose my mind. That's when I knew this was going to change everything. I didn't care if I was overreacting or paranoid. I saw enough. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was cheating on me with her research partner, Mark, during their algorithm development sessions that I now knew were just cover for their sexcapades. I had the evidence, and I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to figure out what to do next, but I already knew. My life was about to turn upside down. After I saw them that night, everything in my head felt like it was spinning out. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her leaning into him, whispering, touching. The betrayal cut so deep I practically felt it physically. I kept asking myself how I could have missed the signs, how I hadn't seen that she was capable of this. I mean, she always acted bitchy and distant, but I just thought she was stressed or bored with our routine. Turns out, she had been lying right to my face the whole time, and I was so blind to it. The next morning I woke up with a pounding headache, my head full of rage and sadness. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. I didn't want to come off as some jealous lunatic accusing her of cheating without proof. But then again, how could I not? I had seen everything. I had watched her sneaking around in that lab, meeting him late at night, acting like she was just working on some complex project. It was obvious she was lying about her algorithm sessions. I decided to get her alone, just to hear her side, even if I already knew the truth. That afternoon, I made sure to be home early, pretending to be busy with work. When she got home, I was waiting in the living room, my hands clenched tight. She walked in, immediately saw my face and froze. Her bitchy smirk disappeared and she looked at me like I was some kind of inconvenienced bug. "Hey babe," she said, trying to sound casual. "What's up?" I just stared at her and said, "We need to talk now." She rolled her eyes but sat down on the couch, crossing her arms. "What's this about? You're overthinking again." I took a deep breath. "I know about the nights you've been sneaking out. I know about Mark. I saw you with him last night, don't even try to deny it." Her eyes widened for half a second, then she switched into her usual bitchy tone. "Oh, come on, seriously, that's just work. You're so paranoid, you don't trust me anymore, do you?" I felt my blood boil. "Don't lie to me, I saw you. I saw the way you looked at him, how close you were. I know you've been sleeping with him. How long has this been going on?" She scoffed. "That's ridiculous. You're just jealous because I spend more time with my research than with you. It's not my fault if Mark is good at what he does, and honestly, I don't owe you explanations for my work or my life." I clenched my fists. "You've been lying to me for weeks, maybe months. I've seen the texts, the late nights, the way you act around him. Did you even think about how I'd feel when I found out? Or were you just too busy fucking him behind my back?" Her face twisted into a sneer. "Wow, you're really twisted. I don't know what your problem is, but I don't have to justify myself to you. I'm not some little girl who needs to explain every move. Maybe if you weren't so insecure, you'd see that I'm doing just fine without your stupid accusations." That was the moment I knew I couldn't let her keep this up. The woman I married was a lying, manipulative bitch, and I was done being played. I didn't yell or scream, yet. Instead, I told her I needed some space, and I left the apartment. I couldn't look at her anymore, not without feeling sick. I went straight to my friend Dave, who's always been a good listener. I broke down and told him everything, how I'd caught her, how she lied, how betrayed I felt. Over the next few days, I played the scene over and over in my head. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and my work suffered. The worst part was knowing that the woman I had trusted and built my life with had been cheating on me with someone I once considered a colleague, someone I had once thought was just a research buddy. Now I knew they had been hiding something much darker. I've never been the vengeful type, but this time I felt something boiling inside me. I needed to think about what I wanted to do next. I couldn't just walk away with my heart shattered and her lying there like she hadn't done a damn thing. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling: humiliated, betrayed, used. I definitely wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. I just didn't know exactly what form that fight was going to take yet. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd suddenly come clean or feel guilty enough to change. That's not who she was. Jane was a bitchy, manipulative woman, and I knew I needed to come up with a plan, a way to get some kind of revenge, or at least make her understand that I wasn't going to be a pushover. I started digging into her phone and emails more thoroughly. I knew she'd lied to me, and I was determined to find some concrete proof, something that would hit her back just as hard as she'd hit me. I hadn't found anything yet that would blow her apart, but I was patient. I knew her pattern. She was sloppy about some things. She always thought she was so clever covering her tracks, but I'd seen enough to know she underestimated me. I also started paying close attention to her schedule. She was still going to the lab, still sneaking out late, but now I was watching, literally staking out her movements. I'd park nearby sometimes just to confirm what I already suspected. She was spending hours with Mark, openly flirting, touching, and kissing behind the lab doors. Their algorithm sessions had turned into something else entirely. I felt the rage bubble up again every time I saw her laugh with him, her hand on his leg, her eyes shining with something I never knew existed in her: excitement, desire, betrayal. One night, I decided I had enough. I couldn't just sit on this information. I needed to see what I was really dealing with, so I broke into her email account, something I'd never done before, but I was desperate. I had to know how deep this rabbit hole went. I found emails from Mark, full of flirtation, plans to meet after hours, and even talk about how special their sessions were becoming. There was one email where Mark called her the brilliant scientist I can't get enough of, and she responded with, "You know I've been feeling the same way. We're perfect together." That was the moment I knew there was no turning back. This wasn't just some work flirtation. This was real, and it was happening under my nose. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at the screen, feeling like someone had punched me in the gut. I knew I needed to do something, but I wasn't sure whether to confront her again, expose her, or just cut my losses. But what struck me hardest was how her lies kept piling up. When I asked her directly about Mark, she'd pretend innocence, smirk, or dismiss me entirely. That bitch was good at hiding what she was doing, but I knew her game now. I realized she'd been lying for so long that she'd started to believe her own bullshit. She acted like she was the victim, like I was the crazy one for suspecting her. That just made my blood boil even more. I needed to get ahead of her, to make her feel the same pain I was feeling. If she thought she could just cheat and lie and get away with it, she was dead wrong. I was calculating, cold, and ready to strike back. But I also knew I needed to be careful. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about standing up for myself and not letting her destroy me completely. I decided that I'd gather enough evidence to confront her publicly, maybe even show her the emails, the texts, everything. I wanted her to see that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. And I also wanted to find a way to make her regret what she'd done. Not necessarily with violence or anything crazy, but enough to make her understand that she'd crossed a line, and there would be consequences. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd have to be clever. I couldn't just blow up her world overnight. I had to control the situation. I'd start by talking to a lawyer, maybe even hearing someone to help me with the evidence. I needed to be prepared for whatever fallout was coming, because I knew I wouldn't just walk away quietly. This was a game, and I was about to play it dirty. But deep down, what I really wanted was for her to feel what she'd made me feel: hurt, humiliated, and powerless. Only then would I feel like I'd truly taken back some control of my life. The plan started forming in my head like a dark, intricate web. I knew I couldn't confront her directly again without risking her spinning some new lie or turning things around on me. That bitch was clever and manipulative. My goal was to catch her in the act, or at least present irrefutable proof that she'd been lying to my face for months. I had to hit her where it hurt, emotionally, psychologically, and maybe even legally. I spent hours poring over the emails and texts I'd stolen, trying to piece together the timeline, the secret meetings, the moments she thought I'd never find out about. I wasn't just trying to gather dirt. I was trying to understand her, what she wanted, what she craved, how far she was willing to go. It was sickening to realize that the woman I married, the woman I thought loved me, had spent so much time secretly with Mark, sharing intimate details about her research and probably more. Then I remembered how she always dismissed my concerns, how she called me paranoid when I questioned her late nights. That was her way of gaslighting me, making me feel like I was the crazy one. But I was. I knew exactly what was happening. I decided I needed to escalate, to play her game just as she'd played mine. I contacted a private investigator I knew, someone who specialized in these kinds of affairs. I wanted her to see that I wasn't bluffing. I gave him the details, the evidence I had, and told him to follow her, gather more. I also asked him to find out if Mark was involved in anything else, like maybe they'd been sneaking out, meeting somewhere else, doing things I'd never even imagined. I needed everything on tape, on record. I wanted her to realize she'd crossed a line, not just with me, but in ways I couldn't even grasp yet. Meanwhile, I started plotting my response. I knew I couldn't just quietly divorce her or confront her blindly. I wanted to humiliate her, to make her see that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I decided that when I had enough evidence, I'd confront her publicly, maybe even show her the emails myself. I wanted her to see that I'd caught her, that I knew everything. Let her try to spin her lies then. I'd be ready. One evening, while she was at the lab doing her supposed research, I broke into her email again, just to see if she'd left any clues or slip-ups. I found a new email from Mark, one that was even more explicit. They'd planned their next session, talked about how perfect they were for each other, and even referenced a secret spot they wanted to meet. It was all laid out in black and white. I could feel my hands trembling as I read. This was real. She was cheating on me, not just emotionally but physically. For so long I'd been trying to deny it, but now I couldn't. The truth was staring me in the face. That night I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with a mix of anger, betrayal, and pain. I wanted to destroy her, to make her suffer just a little, and I knew I had to be strategic. I decided I'd wait until I had all the evidence I needed, photos, recordings, emails, and then I'd drop the bomb. I'd expose her in front of everyone, or maybe just confront her privately with everything I'd found. Either way, she wasn't getting away with this. I also started thinking about what I'd do if she tried to deny or manipulate me again. I'd have the proof, and I'd be prepared for her typical bullshit. I wasn't the kind of guy who liked drama or confrontation for the sake of it, but this was personal. She had lied, cheated, and broken a trust that I thought was unbreakable. I needed her to feel some of that pain, some of that sting I'd felt every day since I saw her with Mark. Deep down, I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about making her see she couldn't just walk all over me like I was some fool. I'd been a good husband, maybe too trusting, but now I realized I had to fight for myself. No more passive acceptance. This was war, and I was ready to fight dirty if I had to. I just hoped I could come out of it with some shred of self-respect intact. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog, everything blurred, and my mind was constantly replaying the scenes, the lies, the betrayal. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep, and every time I looked at her, I saw that bitchy smirk, the way she clung to Mark like she was some hotshot scientist and I was just a placeholder. It infuriated me how easily she lied, how she had convinced herself she could hide this forever. But I was done being naive. I kept the evidence tucked away, waiting for the right moment to strike. I knew she'd realize I was onto her soon enough. She was cunning but not invincible. I also secretly hired that private investigator just to keep tabs on her. Turns out she wasn't just meeting Mark at the lab. She was sneaking out to some sketchy hotel downtown, always late at night, always alone with him. The Pi managed to get photos, videos, even recordings of their conversations. It was worse than I'd imagined. They weren't just colleagues. They'd been fucking behind my back for weeks. Once I had everything, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. I'd caught her red-handed, and she couldn't deny it anymore. I was ready to explode, but I knew I had to stay calm. I couldn't let her spin her lies again. I invited her home one evening, told her I needed to talk, that I had something important to show her. She looked suspicious, trying to act bored, bitchy even, but I was already prepared. When she walked in, I didn't waste time. I pulled out my phone, played the recordings, showed her the photos. Her face turned pale, then red with fury. She started sputtering, trying to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're just jealous. You don't understand how research works." I cut her off. "No, Jane, I understand perfectly. You've been cheating on me with Mark, and not just emotionally. You're fucking him, aren't you? Behind my back during your so-called algorithm sessions." I watched her stumble, her usual bitchy attitude evaporating into shock, then anger. She tried to lie, to spin some bullshit about how it's complicated, how he's just a colleague, but I had all the proof I needed. In that moment, her facade crumbled. Her reaction was priceless. She looked furious, then defeated. She yelled at me, called me paranoid, insecure, jealous, even accused me of spying on her because I didn't trust her. I wanted to punch her in the face, but instead I just looked her straight in the eyes and told her she'd crossed a line, that I was done. Done trusting her, done pretending everything was okay. I told her if she wanted to fuck around, she could do it on her own, without me. She stormed out, screaming all kinds of nasty things, calling me crazy, accusing me of invading her privacy. But I didn't care. That night I felt like I was finally free, free from her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude. I'd always suspected she was hiding something, but now I knew for sure. And honestly, it hurt like hell, but at least now I could start rebuilding my life without her dragging me down. In the days that followed, I made the decision to end everything. I went to a lawyer, started divorce proceedings, and told her that I wanted her out of my life for good. I didn't need her anymore. I realized that the trust was so broken it could never be repaired. She played her game and I had caught her, exposed her. Now it was just about moving forward, alone but finally honest with myself. Looking back, I think the biggest lesson I learned is that sometimes people hide who they really are behind a mask of sophistication or bitchiness. And if you're patient enough, if you look closely enough, you'll find the cracks in that mask. Jane thought she was smarter than me, that her lies would never come out, but I proved her wrong. She cheated, lied, and manipulated her way into my life. And I let her get away with it for too long, but not anymore. I'm done playing the fool. Now I'm just trying to heal, learn from this, and move on. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone reading this, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how much someone tries to gaslight you or call you paranoid. When the truth finally hits, it hits hard, and it's better to face it head-on than to keep living in denial. It's been a few weeks since I finally cut ties with Jane, and honestly, I feel like I'm just starting to breathe again. The pain hasn't completely gone away. I don't think it ever fully will, but I've realized something crucial. I was so caught up in anger, betrayal, and the need for revenge that I almost forgot about myself. I let her manipulate my emotions, ignore my gut, and stay silent while she played her sick game. Now I see clearly. The only person responsible for my happiness is me. I've started focusing on rebuilding my life. I've cut out all the toxic bullshit, thrown away her things, and told my friends what really happened. They're supportive, and honestly, it's been a relief to finally open up about what I went through. The worst part was feeling so alone in all of it, like I was crazy for suspecting her at first. But once I saw the hard evidence and realized she'd been lying for so long, I knew I'd been right all along. One thing I've learned is that trust is fragile, more fragile than I ever thought. When it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But I also learned that I can survive betrayal. I can come through this stronger. I don't regret the time I spent with her, but I do regret not trusting my instincts earlier. If I could give advice, it'd be to listen to that little voice inside you. If something feels off, it probably is. As for her, I don't know where she is now or what she's doing. Honestly, I don't care. I don't want her to be part of my life anymore. She's proven to me that she's nothing but a liar and a user. The betrayal cut so deep that I don't think I could ever look at her the same way again. She used me, played me, and thought she could get away with it, but she was wrong. Now I focus on myself. I'm trying to forget the pain, rebuild my confidence, and move forward. I've started going to therapy, working out, and reconnecting with old friends. It's not easy, and some days are worse than others, but I refuse to let this define me. I deserve better. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. And from now on, I'll be way more careful about who I trust. Looking back, I can't help but feel a mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I finally know the truth and can move on, and sadness because I lost someone I once thought was my partner. But I also know that I gained something valuable, self-awareness and the strength to stand up for myself. I'll never let someone manipulate or betray me again, not without consequences. To anyone out there going through something similar, keep your eyes open. Don't ignore the red flags. And most importantly, trust your gut. If you feel something is wrong, it probably is. Confront it, face it, and don't be afraid to walk away. You're not weak for ending something that's toxic. You're strong for recognizing it. And as for me, I'm finally free. The scars will stay with me for a while, but I'll heal. I already am. I may be single now, but I'd rather be alone than in a relationship built on lies and betrayal. I'm finally choosing to prioritize myself, my happiness, my peace. That's the real victory.